The story begins with a prison called Shawshank Redemption, one of the most secure prisons in the world. Thousands of prisoners are held there, but no one has ever escaped because the security is extremely strict. Some prisoners have spent their entire lives in this prison, and the thought of escaping never even crossed their minds, as the punishment for attempting to escape is death. The scene then shifts to a courtroom where a man named Andy, a banker from a very large American bank, is shown. The judge sentences him to life imprisonment for the murder of his wife and her lover.
Andy maintains his innocence, but he has no proof to support his claim. Therefore, the judge sends him to Shawshank Redemption, the world's most secure prison, for life. Andy arrives at the prison with several other new inmates. As these new prisoners are brought inside, the other inmates place bets on which of the newcomers will cry first that night, wagering a pack of cigarettes.
They each choose one of the new prisoners standing in line outside. A prisoner named Red bets on Andy, believing him to be innocent and from a wealthy background, someone who has never experienced hardship. He thinks Andy will be the first to cry that night. All the prisoners are then led inside and locked in their cells. Later that night, the older prisoners start shouting at the new inmates to scare them and make them cry. And indeed, one of the new prisoners breaks down in tears, saying, "I want to go home." Then the guards come and tell him to stop crying. But when the man doesn't stop crying, the guards drag him out of his cell and beat him so severely that he loses consciousness. Meanwhile, Red loses his bet on Andy and realizes that Andy is very strong because he didn't make a sound despite being subjected to such intimidation. The next day, Red gives his friend a pack of cigarettes because he had lost the bet on Andy. We then see Andy eating breakfast alone in silence. That's when Andy meets Brooks, the oldest inmate in the prison. Brooks has been in this prison for almost 50 years. Andy wisely tries to learn all the rules of the prison, both big and small, and about every inmate from Brooks. Brooks then tells Andy all the secrets of the prison and tells him that if he needs anything from outside, he should go to an inmate named Red. Hearing this, Andy doesn't wait and goes straight to Red and says, "I heard you can get anything from outside." Red replies, "Yes, I can, but nothing that can be used to escape or kill someone." Andy tells Red that he needs a hammer. Upon hearing the word hammer, Red asks, "Why do you need a hammer? Are you going to kill someone with it?" Andy replies, "No, I'm not going to kill anyone. I don't have any enemies here." Hearing this, Red says, "You may not have any enemies here now, but some people are going to become your enemies soon." He points to some men and warns Andy that these men have their eyes on him. Therefore, he should stay away from them. The next day, at Andy's request, Red gets him a hammer. When he sees the hammer, Red starts laughing because the hammer is very small, and Red thinks to himself that it would take 600 years to dig a tunnel out of the prison with this hammer. After this, Red delivers the hammer to Andy's cell through Brooks. Days pass like this, and one day, when Andy is working in the laundry, the three men who had their eyes on Andy grab him. Andy tries to free himself from them, but he couldn't control the three of them alone. So these three men beat Andy severely and then assault him. This continues repeatedly. These men would always grab Andy, beat him, and then assault him. 2 years pass in this way, and an announcement is made that some people are needed to repair the roof. A team of prisoners, including Red and Andy, volunteer for the roof work. They all get to work, and their supervision on the roof is the responsibility of a very strict security guard named Hadley. Hadley is a very strict man who beats the prisoners severely for even the slightest mistake. While all the prisoners are working on the roof, Hadley seems a little troubled and tells his colleagues that his brother recently died, leaving $35,000 in his account. Now, his brother has no one else in the world besides him. Therefore, he feels entitled to the money. But the problem is that when he transfers these $35,000 to his account, the government will take all the money as tax. While Hadley was talking to his colleagues, Andy overheard everything. Andy, being a former banker, knew how to withdraw this money without paying taxes to the government. Without hesitation, Andy approaches Hadley and asks him, "Do you trust your wife?" Hearing this, Hadley gets angry and grabs Andy, taking him to the edge of the roof. But before throwing him off, Andy tells him that if he trusts his wife and believes she won't betray him, he can easily transfer his brother's money to his wife's account without paying any taxes. This is because there's a government rule that allows a person to gift up to $35,000 to their spouse throughout their lifetime, and this money is tax-free. Andy also says that if he hires a lawyer from outside, They will charge him a lot of money, but he can do this for him for free. Hadley then asks, "What do you want in return?" Andy smiles and says, "I don't want anything. When your work is done, just buy all my friends a beer." And the next day, all the prisoners were sitting on the roof, enjoying beer. In other words, Andy had done Hadley's job. But Andy didn't drink beer. He sat in a corner, happy to watch everyone else drinking it. Andy's fellow inmates were also very happy with him because drinking beer in prison was almost impossible. But thanks to Andy, their wish was fulfilled. Time passed, and Andy and Red's friendship deepened. A few days later, a film was shown to all the prisoners, and everyone was watching a Rita Hayworth movie. Then Andy approached Red and said, "I want a big poster of Rita Hayworth." Andy asked Red for the poster because Red was the only one in the entire prison who could get anything from the outside. After this, Andy went outside, but as soon as he stepped out, the same 3 men who had previously harassed him were standing there. They told Andy to come with them, but this time, Andy refused. When Andy refused, they grabbed him and tried to force him to go with them, but Andy fought back. However, there were 3 of them, so they beat Andy very badly. But this time, they couldn't do anything more to Andy. However, they beat him so severely that Andy ended up in the hospital for a month, and the man who beat Andy was put in solitary confinement for a week. A week later, when he returned to his cell, the same officer whose $200 tax Andy had saved was there. Someone had told the officer that this man had beaten Andy so badly that the poor guy was in the hospital for a month. Now, the officer beat that man so severely that he became permanently paralyzed. A month later, when Andy returned to his cell from the hospital, he found a large poster of Rita Hayworth in his cell, which was actually a welcome gift from Red. Days passed, and one day, the prison warden, along with a security guard, came to Andy's cell and searched it. After searching the cell and finding nothing, the warden's eyes fall on a poster on the wall. The warden says that he doesn't usually allow posters in the cells, but he'll let him keep this one. The search was actually just a pretext. The warden had been told by the officer how Andy had saved him $200 on his taxes. That's why the warden wanted to meet Andy for his own benefit. Andy is holding a Bible, which the warden takes from him and leaves with it. But after walking a short distance, he returns and gives the Bible back to Andy, saying, "Salvation is in this." The next day, the warden calls Andy to his office and says that an intelligent man like him shouldn't be behind bars. So the warden makes Andy the library assistant. In the library is an old man named Brooks, who has been managing the library for many years. Then, the officer for whom Andy had saved the $200 brings another officer to see Andy. He had a problem with his tax return, which Andy fills out in just a few minutes. Because of this, Andy becomes the talk of the entire prison. As the years pass, Andy's workload increases. Because of this, Andy needs an assistant, and he chooses his best friend, Red, to be his assistant. One day in the library, Brooks holds a knife to a prisoner's throat and threatens to kill him without any reason. In reality, the government has pardoned his sentence, but he doesn't want to leave the prison. He has spent 50 years in this prison. His entire life has been spent here, and he has completely forgotten what the outside world is like. This prison world is his real world, and he believes that if he commits murder, his sentence will be extended, and he will remain in this prison. After Andy persuades him, Brooks releases the man whose throat he was holding the knife to. Reluctantly, when Brooks is released from prison, the outside world seems very strange to him. In 50 years, the pace of the outside world has increased dramatically. Where there used to be only one car on the road, now there is a crowd of vehicles. After a few days, he starts working in a supermarket, but he doesn't feel comfortable in the outside world at all. He constantly misses the prison and wants to return. Sometimes he even thinks about committing a crime so that he can go back to prison. But Brooks doesn't want to commit any crime at his age, and he can't survive in this crowded, fast-paced life, so he takes his own life. Before dying, he writes a letter to his fellow prisoners, which makes everyone very emotional when they read it. Meanwhile, we see the prison where the warden starts a new program. In this program, prison inmates are taken outside to work so they can learn how to earn money through hard work. The prisoners agree to this work because they all want to breathe fresh air outside. The warden uses these prisoners for labor, and through this project, the warden gets many contracts because the labor of prison inmates is very cheap. The local construction labor teams outside the prison can't find work anywhere because the warden gets the work done by his prisoners at half the price. The warden does this because the prisoners weren't laborers whom he had to pay a daily wage.
Therefore, the warden earns a lot of money by getting the prisoners to work for free, and this money is all black money. However, Andy, being a banker, converts all of the warden's black money into white money. In fact, Andy deposits this money in the name of a man who doesn't exist, transferring all the money to his account, so that if the police ever find out, they will be looking for a man who was never born. Now, a new prisoner arrives at the prison named Tommy. Tommy is very young and has been to several prisons at his young age. Tommy is very friendly, so he quickly makes friends with many prisoners in the jail. One day at the dinner table, Tommy tells everyone that he has been stealing for many years. That's why he has been to many prisons, and this time too, he is in this prison because of theft. Hearing Tommy's story, Andy tells him that if he is getting caught repeatedly after stealing, it means that this work doesn't suit him and he should stop stealing. Tommy finds Andy's advice perfectly reasonable. So, Tommy starts asking Red for information about Andy. Tommy tells Red that Andy is a very intelligent and decent person. Why was he imprisoned? Red tells him that Andy was a very successful banker, but he murdered his wife and her lover, for which he was sentenced to life imprisonment. Hearing this, Tommy becomes thoughtful, as if something has just clicked in his mind. He then calls for Andy. Now Andy and Red are standing in front of Tommy. Tommy tells them both that 4 years ago he was in a prison where he met an inmate. That inmate told him that one night he went to a house to steal. During the robbery, the homeowner woke up. Fearing capture, he killed the homeowner and his wife. Later, he found out that they weren't husband and wife, but lovers, and the woman was the wife of a very wealthy banker. Sometime later, when Tommy read the news in the newspaper, he learned that when the police investigated the two murders, they suspected the banker had killed them. Therefore, the banker was arrested for the murder of his wife and her lover. Here we learned that Andy was innocent. After learning all this, Andy goes to the warden and tells him everything. But the warden deliberately doesn't believe him, because Andy is the one who launders his black money and knows all the warden's secrets. So, if Andy leaves, the warden won't be able to earn any more money, and his secret about the black money might also be exposed. Therefore, he tells Andy that it's a false story. He says he hears such stories every day. Andy promises the warden that even if he is freed, he will keep his secret. But the warden doesn't listen to anything Andy says. Seeing this, Andy gets very angry that he helped this man so much. But today, despite being innocent, he's not letting him go. So Andy shouts at the warden. Then the warden puts Andy in solitary confinement for a month, and after that, he goes straight to Tommy and asks him if everything he told Andy is true. Tommy says yes, it's absolutely true. Then the warden asks him if he would be willing to testify in court if called upon. Tommy says yes, he's ready. Upon hearing this, the warden signals to the guard above, and the guard shoots Tommy, riddling him with bullets. The warden then goes to Andy and tells him that Tommy tried to escape, which is why he was shot. But Andy understands why Tommy was killed and thinks to himself that the warden is a terrible person. Andy tells the warden that he will never do his work again. The warden replies that he will have to do his work, otherwise he will make this prison a living hell for him. As he leaves, the warden tells the security guard to put him in solitary confinement for another month. Solitary confinement was a terrifying place where prisoners had to spend a whole month in complete darkness. Andy had already spent a month in this solitary confinement, but now he would have to spend another month in that dark, small room. The news spreads throughout the prison that Andy is serving a sentence for a crime he never committed. All the prisoners in the jail feel very sorry for Andy. After spending 2 months in solitary confinement, when Andy comes out, Red approaches him. Andy asks Red if he will ever get out of this prison. Red says yes, but only when he is very old and his mind has stopped working. Andy says he's going to get out of here and go to Mexico. There's a beautiful place on the coast in Mexico. They say a man can lose himself there. I'll open a restaurant there. I'll repair my boat on the beach, and I'll need a resourceful guy to bring me supplies from the outside. He was actually referring to Red. Hearing this, Red says that hope is a dangerous thing. It can drive a man mad. You have to come back to reality. Mexico is a long way from here. Saying this, Red starts to leave. But before leaving, Andy tells Red to promise that if he ever gets released from here, he'll do something for him. Red says, yes, he will. Then Andy gives Red an address and says that whenever he gets out, he should go to that place where there's a beautiful tree in the middle of a large field. That's where I propose to my wife. He tells Red that under that tree, inside a wall, he'll find a black stone
beneath which he has hidden a box, and whenever he gets released, he should go there and look under that stone to see what's in the box. Saying this, Andy leaves and goes straight to the warden. He finishes the warden's work and puts all his documents in a special safe. After putting the documents away, the warden gives Andy his clothes. He tells Andy to get his clothes pressed and his shoes shined like glass. After that, Andy returns to his cell. Meanwhile, Red is very worried that night because he was afraid that Andy might kill himself. The night passes and morning comes. As soon as morning arrives, the cell doors of all the prisoners open and all the prisoners come out. But Andy doesn't come out of his cell. This was the first time in the last 20 years that a prisoner hadn't come out of his cell in the morning. Then Red's gaze also falls on Andy's cell, and Red's anxiety grows, fearing that Andy might have killed himself. Just then, a guard angrily heads towards Andy's cell, but when he arrives and looks inside, his eyes widen in disbelief. There was no one in the cell. Andy had escaped. Now we see the warden taking out his shoes to put them on. But in the box, he finds not his own shoes, but Andy's old ones. Suddenly, the prison sirens blare, signaling a prisoner's escape. The warden rushes to Andy's cell and finds it empty. He then tells the security guards to go and bring Red, as he was always with Andy. Red is brought in. The warden asks Red, "Where is Andy?" Red replies, "How should I know?" This enrages the warden. He asks, "Was he a ghost that he vanished overnight?" In his anger, the warden picks up some stones lying nearby and starts throwing them at the guards and Red. He even throws a stone at the poster on the wall, but the stone doesn't fall. It goes right through the poster. When the warden puts his hand through the hole, he discovers that Andy had dug a huge tunnel there. Everyone is astonished, as the wall was very strong. Digging a tunnel through this wall without machinery was almost impossible, but Andy had made the impossible possible and escaped. Afterward, all the guards go to the place where Andy had emerged. There they find Andy's old clothes and the hammer that Andy had asked Red to get for him 20 years ago. This was the same hammer that Andy had been using for the past 20 years to dig the tunnel in his cell wall. For 20 years, Andy carried out this work so meticulously that no one suspected a thing. He would also put any dirt he dug out of the wall into his pockets and scatter it around the grounds. The last time Andy worked for the warden, he kept all the documents related to the warden's ill-gotten money. He cleverly placed his Bible, which he carried with him, in the warden's safe right in front of him, making it seem as if it were the documents themselves. He also wore the clothes the warden had given him to press, putting his old clothes on top, and wore the shoes the warden had given him to polish to a mirror shine. As soon as all the lights went out at night, Andy crawled out through the tunnel he had dug in his cell. He then broke a sewer pipe and crawled through the narrow pipe, escaping from the prison from which no one had ever escaped before. The sewer pipe Andy crawled through was almost 2 kilometers long. The next morning, Andy went to the bank where all the warden's black money was kept. The money was in the name of a man who didn't even exist. Andy had orchestrated this entire document scheme, and he had been forging the account owner's signature from inside the prison. Therefore, Andy had no difficulty withdrawing all of the warden's money. He had all the documents in the name of that fictitious man. So Andy went to the banks and withdrew all the money, which amounted to $370,000. Thus, Andy not only gained his freedom, but also became incredibly wealthy. It becomes clear that Andy had been planning this escape from the very day he entered the prison. The warden had treated Andy very badly in prison and had also killed Tommy, so he gives the evidence of the warden's ill-gotten money to the media. The next morning, the news is published in the newspaper, and when the warden opens his safe, he finds not his documents, but a Bible. On the first page of the Bible, Andy has written, "You were right, salvation is in this." And when the warden turns the page, he sees a hammer mark. Andy had actually cut the pages of the Bible into the shape of a hammer, creating a hollow space inside where he hid his hammer. And 20 years ago, when the warden first went to Andy's cell and took the Bible from his hands and then returned it, the hammer was already hidden inside that same Bible. This shocks the warden greatly. Meanwhile, the news of the warden's illegal money had spread throughout the city. Reporters and police are arriving outside the prison to arrest the warden, and before the police can arrest him, the warden shoots himself. After some time, Andy's friend Red's sentence is also commuted, and he is given a job by the government. But Red doesn't feel comfortable in the outside world because he had spent 40 years of his life in prison. Red lives in the same room where Brooks used to live, and Red also contemplates suicide, but then he remembers the promise he made to Andy. After this, he drives to that place and goes to a large grassy field where there is a large tree and a stone wall. On that wall, there is a black stone, and when he lifts the stone, he finds a box underneath. Inside the box are some money and a letter. The letter is from Andy. In the letter, Andy writes that he is waiting for Red at the place Andy had told him about in prison. Further on, Andy writes that hope is a good thing. After this, Red arrives at the place, and when he goes to the seashore, he sees Andy sitting in a boat, repairing it. This place and everything that happens there is a realization of the dream Andy had shared with Red in prison, the dream that Red had dismissed, saying that hope was a dangerous thing. Then the two embrace, and with that, the story ends. If you like this video, please subscribe to our channel and like the video.